Have a great day, everyone.
It's Thursday, October 20th, and President Biden sees the tank half full. We start here. The White House doesn't have many ways to unilaterally lower gas prices, but it's using one of them.
We're going to continue to stabilize markets and decrease the prices.
What the Strategic Petroleum Reserve means for your wallet and for the midterms. A Florida town is finally reconnected to the outside world.
Now they've just got to find a place to dump all of this stuff.
That's only the beginning of the challenges as hurricane victims rebuild. And Scientology's not on trial here, but it's a key part of the case.
All of these women were members of the Church of Scientology.
3 women say they would have come forward sooner if not for their religion. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. I was looking at the official websites for 2 candidates yesterday, Senator Raphael Warnock and gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. They're both Democrats. They're both running for statewide office in Georgia. They're both courting essentially the same voters. But when you look at Stacey Abrams' messaging, it's all about the big topics that have dominated national political headlines all year. Guns, abortion, voting rights, what you'd call social issues. When you look at Warnock's messaging, it is relentlessly focused on one issue, the economy, economic relief. Guess which one of them is favored to win their race?
We passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which had 2 of my provisions.
According to our partners at 538, Warnock is easily outperforming his ally, Stacey Abrams. And so while many Democrats have positioned this November as a clear inflection point for abortion rights, yesterday, when President Biden made a big announcement, it wasn't about abortion. It was about gas prices.
With my announcement today, we're going to continue to stabilize markets and decrease the prices.
Let's start the day with ABC's Elizabeth Schulze, who covers fiscal policy in Washington. Elizabeth, the president says he's tapping the country's strategic oil reserve again. What does that do exactly? How significant is this?
Hey, Brad. Well, look, the White House is trying to stabilize and lower prices at the pump. And this is a 15 million barrel release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Basically, it's part of this bigger 180 million barrel drawdown that the president announced last spring, but really has been the biggest release from the stockpile in history. In fact, the White House says there could actually be more releases ahead going into the winter months. And this is the step that the president says he can take to try to ease some of the rise in gas prices that have been going on in recent months, in fact, in recent weeks. You know, just for a little bit of background, Brad, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is basically the country's stockpile of crude oil, and we have been tapping into this over several months now. And the White House says it's going to sell that stockpile of crude oil into the market. The goal is that it'll boost the global supply of oil, and if there's more oil out there, that should help bring oil prices down, which would then bring gas prices down.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, Elizabeth, is this political? Because it seems so close to Election Day that this is something you'd want to do, is lower gas prices. On the other hand, experts say, this could really make a difference on gas prices. Can both of those things be true?
You know, Brad, I think both of those can be true. A lot of economists agree that tapping into this reserve has helped lower gas prices for consumers like you or me. Estimates go from 17 to 42 cents a gallon, according to the Treasury Department. So basically, how much you pay at the pump has come down because of these steps the White House has taken. But you're absolutely right that the timing of this does raise eyebrows.
Is it politically motivated, sir?
No, it's not.
3 weeks before the midterms.
Look, it makes sense. I've been doing this for how long now? It's not politically motivated at all. It's motivated to make sure that I continue to push on what I've been pushing on.
We've seen gas prices after this long stretch where they were going down over the summer months. They've started to tick back up just in recent weeks, 3 weeks out from the midterm elections. The national average is now at $3.85, and that's 20 cents higher than it was even a month ago.
This is just ridiculous. It's crazy. Have to put in some extra hours at work.
So it is certainly a liability for them. Part of the reality here, though, Brad, is that oil operates in a global market, and there's just not a lot that the White House alone can do when it comes to higher oil prices. We've seen OPEC Plus. Some of the biggest oil-producing countries have basically agreed to cut production. We also know that the European Union is going to ban crude oil imports from Russia starting in December, and that all means less oil on the market. So even as the White House is trying to kind of boost supply, there are these other major headwinds in the rest of the global economy that are going to mean that it might be hard for oil prices to be as low as because the president or Democrats want them to be 3 weeks out from the election.
Well, that's the thing. Is there any drawback to so I get if you're like, wow, this is a craven political move, it also seems like it could help Americans. Are there drawbacks to that, though? Like, if it's so great, why wouldn't you have done this 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the election? Why is it right before Election Day that all of a sudden it's like, we got to do this, guys?
Yeah, this is an argument that we're hearing from Republicans who say the president is playing politics with a strategic asset here. And this is something that some oil traders and people who watch the market closely are expressing some concerns about. Basically, that this stockpile of oil that we have is used for emergency situations historically. Things like hurricanes or even geopolitical examples. And we have seen that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at its lowest level now since 1984. This has been a significant release from this stockpile. So the concern, and some of this obviously is politically motivated, is, look, this isn't what we should be using this for, to have Americans be paying less at this time right now. The White House is aware of these concerns, and the president says there's more than enough oil in the case of an emergency, but the White House is actually also pledging to replenish the stockpile if oil drops to a certain level, Brad.
Yeah, the question is, will that global price drop at all? And in the meantime, what do we do here in the U.S.? Apparently, the answer was, let's release these barely 3 weeks out from Election Day. Elizabeth Schulze, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Brad.
When Hurricane Ian hurtled towards Florida's coast last month, it wasn't just sending wind, it also, of course, moved a huge amount of water. Millions of gallons of seawater surging from the Gulf over flat Florida land. And remember, there are many island communities in Florida. Some of them have just one way in, one way out.
I've authorized repairs to the Sanibel Causeway. So you have it was severed in 3 places, and there's no way to get to the island without having the causeway.
For weeks, in the wake of this destruction, Sanibel Island has been inaccessible to the outside world. That changed yesterday when its only bridge was at least partly repaired, but that's still just a fraction of the work still to be done. Let's go to ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, who is in Florida right now surveying the damage that's still there. Matt, I feel like people are always on site during the disaster. They all show up for the anniversaries and the ribbon cuttings like the year later. This is perhaps the most crucial part of the rebuilding process. What are you seeing there?
Just a lot of debris. There are literally mountains of debris, landfills full of debris, and that's really the biggest problem for the state of Florida right now.
Floors are ruined, the walls are down, the ceilings have all dropped down, the water level is above the roof. The whole thing this is everything we could salvage. It's our lives.
They've gone through the rescue, they've gone through the recovery. They are mostly good with housing everybody. Now they've just got to find a place to dump all of this stuff. And we are talking about millions of cubic yards of debris. The director of emergency management in Florida told me that's like dump trucks parked end to end for 436 miles or so. Hundreds of thousands of dump trucks.
Wow, like what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Everything. Basically, if a house was not completely destroyed, and this is mostly along the coastline, then everything inside of it was. Anything that touched water, salt water specifically, it just becomes completely useless.
We lost everything. Food, furniture, clothing, medical supplies. We lost a lot.
People have stopped doing any triage in their homes. It is basically the entire contents of people's houses have been dumped out on the sidewalk. But in the hard-hit areas, you're just seeing, instead of sidewalks and lawns, piles of the contents of people's houses that are now soaked and trashed and moldy.
Well, and so that all sounded bad enough when you were sending some of these pictures back. But then we also heard that parts of Florida are now seeing like a flesh-eating bacteria. I mean, I didn't know how this could get worse, but what are the health concerns when you're dealing with flooding like this?
They are pretty serious. This is a flesh-eating bacteria that we've seen before in Florida. The problem is the size of the amount of rain and the water that was pushed inland has basically neutralized all of the natural filtration systems of the bays and the bayous and the marshes and the rivers and the estuaries. And so nothing is working quite right. Everything is slightly off kilter, which is why we have such a high bacteria content.
We just have a whole bunch of material decomposing And it's just creating sort of like a smorgasbord for a lot of bacteria to feed upon.
Not to mention the fact that septic tanks, porta-johns, everything in a boat has been basically dumped into these waterways, making them massively toxic and full of human bacteria and all sorts of other bacteria and nastiness and runoff that we don't want to know about. Anywhere from 4 to 100 times the maximum allowed levels. So one conservationist told me that it is literally dangerous to get into the water in parts of the west coast of Florida right now. Like, avoid it at all costs.
Well, and that just kind of makes me think about all the kind of lesser known ramifications of this type of a mass disaster. Are there other sort of things that you're seeing there that make you go, oh, I would not have thought this would be the thing you'd have to be dealing with weeks after a hurricane?
They're constantly new things. One of them, and one of the reasons that I'm here, is a problem that they've found with electric vehicle batteries.
So you don't know which EV has actually had water get into the battery pack, which is what's going to cause the issues.
Right. This one, you know, because it looked like it caught
fire. So this is the one that actually caught on fire after having sat in the lot for a while?
Apparently after they are submerged for, a number of hours in salt water, a chemical reaction begins that basically makes them ticking time bombs, potentially.
There are an increasing number of tow truck drivers and companies who are just refusing to tow these vehicles.
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, they're
that?
very dangerous cars to tow. They have a potential to catch fire at pretty much any time.
The salt water can contribute to a chain reaction which leads to fires igniting in their engines. And once the fires ignite, this is according to the Department of Transportation, they can keep sparking up for weeks.
But just like spontaneously light on fire?
Light on fire burst into sputtering flames a day, weeks, even a month after they were flooded.
That when they restore power to the grid, what about the vehicles that are sitting in garages or parking garages that were plugged in, charging before the storm surge happened?
And you don't know when that's going to be, and we don't know what actually triggers the specific fire. It could be something as simple as the rotation of the wheels or triggering the internal battery system in the car by opening the door.
We need you to lean forward, partner with us, and understand how we can protect our first responders, how we can save people's homes from burning down.
Folks are waiting for electric car manufacturers to tell them what causes this, but I think we're in a new era here, right? There are a lot more electric cars on the road, and as climate change increases, we're going to see the severity of storms like this increase, more saltwater flooding into coastal areas where more people have electric vehicles.
Well, and that's what's so bizarre about all this, Matt, because if it seems like climate change is going to create more disasters like this, we're trying to slow climate change. How do you do that? You lower emissions. How do you do that? You use, cleaner types of energy. How do you do that? Maybe you drive an electric vehicle, but if electric vehicles can't necessarily handle the world that we've already created for them, that creates concerns. Of course, climate scientists would say a few fires from these electric vehicles post-flood is not nearly as destructive as all the carbon that we're pumping into the air. So not a reason not to get one, but geez. Matt Gutman in Florida. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, Hollywood's always had troublesome power dynamics. 3 accusers say that only gets worse when you add Scientology to the mix. The trial of Danny Masterson is underway after the break.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
America is being poisoned with fentanyl, and we don't even know it.
Just heard my wife screaming. She told me they had just died.
50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Keep breathing, come on. It's poison, it's pure poison.
A few grains of salt worth of fentanyl will kill you.
Just my agency has seized enough to kill the entire country.
ABC News Live presents Poisoned, America's Fentanyl Crisis. The powerful series, streaming free on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Right now, in a Los Angeles courthouse, there are two incredibly high-profile rape cases playing out in courtrooms that sit literally across the hall from each other. In one of these rooms has been the Harvey Weinstein case. In the other is the actor Danny Masterson, former star of That 70s Show, who's been accused by 3 women of rape.
Scientology may not be on trial, but the religion came up over and over again today at Danny Masterson's trial on 3 counts of rape.
And what's been so unique about this case is that everyone involved was a practicing Scientologist at the time of the alleged crimes. And while the judge has said Scientology is not on trial here, all 3 alleged victims say one of the reasons they waited years to speak up is precisely because of how they thought they'd be viewed within their church. ABC's Zoreen Shaw has been inside that courthouse this week in LA. Zoreen, can you just explain these allegations and how they came to light?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brad. This is a really interesting case, and I want to first take you back to the early 2000s. I mean, you remember watching That 70s Show? Ashton Kutcher was on there, Mila Kunis, and then you had Danny Masterson.
The government has a car that runs on water, man. They just don't want us to know, because then we'd buy all the water. Then there'd be nothing left to drink but beer.
It was at the height of his fame. And this time period is really important for exactly what you just brought up, because the 3 allegations of felony rape stem from this time period between 2001 and 2003. We're talking about allegations of violent, forcible rape, all from women that he actually knew. So there's 3 women with allegations. 2 of them, we don't actually know their identities, but one of them we do. Her name is Chrissy Bixler.
He just always got angry. He would get angry. He felt like because he supported me, that it's like I was a possession.
And in the prelim hearing, we actually heard evidence that was presented there. Our KBC station, our local station in Los Angeles got it. And so we can actually hear her describe what Masterson does to her, according to her, during one of these nights.
When I pulled his hair to really get him off because he was putting himself inside of me, and I really did not want to that night, and I was just fed up.
And Masterson, for his part, says it was all consensual sex, and he hasn't actually even worked since these allegations came up just a few years ago. And you mentioned Harvey Weinstein. These allegations all came up around that same time.
Morning, Danny.
Hey, good morning.
Masterson shows up in court this week. He didn't say very much. It was opening remarks, and also the first witness takes the stand. It's Jane Doe number 1 this time, and she is the first witness for the prosecution. You know, she was really emotional, Brad. I mean, understandably, she's describing these allegations of rape. You know, at one point she points to Masterson across the room to identify him. She goes really, really step by step in incredible detail on what happens. At one point she claims that she woke up to him raping her, and she felt this really just sharp pain in her backside.
Wow. And so then, of course, we're hearing more testimony as this week goes on. Zoreen, where does Scientology fit into all this, though? Because it's not like the church is being charged with anything.
Yeah, that's really important to know. They are not on trial. But this is a key part of this case, right? All of these members, all of these women were members of the Church of Scientology. And that's where this starts to take some really wild twists, Brad. I mean, you've heard people talk about it, how celebrities have this incredible importance in Scientology.
Well, celebrities in the Church of Scientology are treated very specially.
Mike Rinder is someone who was very high up in the Church of Scientology. He was a spokesperson for them. He eventually left, though. And he talks about the role that celebrities played in the church.
L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, originally stated that celebrities are important, that celebrities set the trends in society, celebrities give you credibility, and he, in fact, began an organization within the larger Scientology organization devoted exclusively to servicing celebrities.
So you have these women, and this is the key reason why we're talking about it, because the women say that based on what they understood from the Church of Scientology, they were not allowed to report these allegations. And one of the women, Brad, she says that the church's policies state that if you have a legal situation, you cannot handle it externally from the church because you will be excommunicated from the church, which means they would lose everyone who they were close to, their family members in the church, their friends in the church. One of them feared their parents would disown them.
And Zorine, is this an actual policy in the Church of Scientology? Like, don't go to a government law enforcement when you've got an accusation against a fellow Scientologist?
The church has made their stance very clear, Brad. They say they have no policy prohibiting or discouraging members from reporting criminal conduct of Scientologists or of anyone to law enforcement. They say it's quite the opposite. They really, really stress that Scientologists abide by all the laws of the land.
Scientologists are conditioned to take everything to the organization because the organization always has the answers of how best to deal with any circumstance.
But Rinder does say, for his part, he says there is a sense within Scientology that it's just better to keep things internal. It's better to handle things within the organization.
It is tantamount to assigning someone to hell to turn them over to law enforcement and the court system.
Yeah, and the Church of Scientology, we should say, has called Mike Rinder a liar and an apostate. They say he was thrown out of the church. And the idea here is that Scientologists wouldn't work with law enforcement. They say that's absurd because they do so much work with law enforcement in the community. They say it just doesn't make sense. But I do think I'm wondering, though, Zorine, like, at the end of the day, how much is Scientology going to figure into this trial? Like, I get the people in LA are talking about it, but will any of this affect whether Danny Masterson goes to jail or not?
Yeah, so I was in the courtroom this week, Brad, and you could really see the prosecution playing up Scientology at every moment that they could. And there was one moment where the witness, talked about how, the goal of Scientology is to clean the planet. And the lawyer said, so this particular policy, did that affect you? And she says, yes, you can be reported, she says, for relationships with WOGs. Those are people outside of Scientology, unless you bring them into the fold of Scientology. And it was very soon after that, Brad, that the judge, dismissed the entire jury. She said this trial is not going to be inundated with Scientology. Even if it had controlled every aspect of this woman's life, it doesn't make it admissible here in court. And then she got mad at the other lawyer as well. She says, look, I know you're going to object, but I don't need to object at every single time that this is brought up. She says, if that happens, I'm going to keep dismissing the jury. And guess what? I promise you the jury is going to get irritated and it's not going to be at me.
Right. As the judge sort of tries to keep this just about Danny Masterson. We'll see how that works. Zorine Shaw in LA. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, one more quick break. When we come back, we found a scientific study that slaps. One last thing is next.
Tonight, with the balance of power at stake, the record turnout of early voters, plus the new atrocities in the latest chapter of Putin's war, more Americans turn to world news tonight with David Muir, the most watched newscast on all of television.
The hottest views in daytime are happening right here.
We talk about things on this show that people don't talk about.
That I can't wait to see.
Honest takes from strong women.
We need all hands on deck, and we need it right now. This is the time to speak out.
Unafraid to get real.
We stick by our points of view. We're all seeing it differently, and that's the beauty of The View.
And that's why the most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
'Tis time!
The real monster fun begins.
Here they come! Why was I cursed with such idiot sisters?
Just lucky, I guess.
Sounds creepy. We're home.
Nights of Halloween. Watch all October on Freeform.
Are you ready for a Friday morning party live? Then you've come to the right place.
That's right.
Tomorrow morning, Michael's taking you to an HBCU tailgate you won't forget with his pal, Coach Deion Sanders.
Hey, Straight, we ready for you. Good morning, America!
ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Last thing. You ever feel like you're an absolute magnet to mosquitoes? Like, they don't seem to care about certain people, but for some reason, you get bit absolutely everywhere you go.
Why am I the preferred food of mosquitoes? I don't get it.
That is a real phenomenon. We've actually known about it for a while now. What has been less clear is why certain people are so much more delicious to these bugs than others. Some have hypothesized it must be our blood type. Well, this week, a study was published in the journal Cell saying, no, it's actually all about the way your skin smells. So in this study, scientists asked 64 volunteers at Rockefeller University to be mosquito bait. No, they weren't suckers who ended up covered in bites. These people just wore stockings on their arms for about a day every few years for consistency. They gave those stockings to scientists who then stuck them in a tank with mosquitoes to see whose musk they seemed to prefer. The mosquitoes didn't just favor certain victims, they consistently swarmed on them. So what attracts them? The working theory in this paper is a mixture of acids on the skin. The bad news is you can't really change your makeup. It's genetic. The good news is it could give us new ideas for mosquito repellent. But if you think you can just fool a mosquito, good luck with that. The researchers have said home remedies like eating garlic or extra vitamin B have not shown any consistent effects. Even when scientists removed what they thought were the bug's smell receptors, these mosquitoes kept choosing certain stockings. What can I say? They're bloody brilliant. What I liked about reading this study was how they described certain smells as attractive or unattractive to mosquitoes. So it would be like we gathered 12 attractive people together. We left out the unattractive people. Like, it began to feel less scientific and more just mean. Hey, if you flock to the show every morning for the buzziest stories, hit us up with a 5-star rating and review. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
Bring them on. If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom! Now that's how you start your day, people.
America is being poisoned with fentanyl, and we don't even know it.
Just heard my wife screaming. She told me they had just died.
50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Keep breathing, come on. It's poison, it's pure poison.
A few grains of salt worth of fentanyl will kill you.
Just my agency has seized enough to kill the entire country.
ABC News Live presents Poisoned, America's Fentanyl Crisis. The powerful series, streaming free on ABC News Live.
Amber Rose Isaac was the love of my life.
She went into the hospital, and then I just see Shamani is...
She was as good as dead as soon as she walked into that hospital.
Black women are 4 times more likely to die than their white counterparts with the same symptoms.
I can't let Amber be another statistic. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else.
This fight is not over.
We're doing this together, man.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
'Tis time.
The real monster fun begins.
Here they come. Why was I cursed with such idiot sisters?
Just lucky, I guess.
Sounds creepy. We're home.
31 Nights of Halloween. Watch all October on Freeform.
Right now on America This Morning, bracing for blackouts. The dire new warning in Ukraine today as Russia targets power plants. New attacks caught on camera, and now Vladimir Putin declaring martial law. What's really behind his decision? We hear exclusively from Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
Breaking overnight why the January 6th committee is having trouble serving former President Trump a subpoena, and what Vice President Mike Pence said last night when asked if he'll support Trump if he's the nominee in 2024.
A health alert for parents. Doctors seeing an unprecedented spike in respiratory illnesses in children. What's to blame and what to look out for?
Daycare outrage. The felony charges these daycare workers now face for dressing up and scaring young children. Parents saying the kids were left traumatized.
Drawing delayed. The glitch during the Powerball lottery drawing overnight. And what happens now?
And later, forget the planes and trains. The new way to travel in style for